Hi, Monet. How are you?
I'm good. I was at a birth all night last night, and so I'm tired. I've had a string of overnight births beginning of August, so I'm really looking forward to sleeping well tonight. But yeah, it was a beautiful birth. The sunrise came up. They had horses, so I got to go outside and see a horse as the sun was rising, which was really special. So even though I'm sleep deprived, I feel really happy that I got to attend such a beautiful birth. And yeah, the horse definitely was like the icing on the cake for me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Was it up in the mountains or was it somebody?
No, it was right in Denver. So yeah,
Cool.
yeah, a horse in the city. So super special.
Wild West out there, right?
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, today we're going to talk about what every birth photographer needs to know. And there's a lot of things that Monet and I have learned over the years, and we're excited to share all of them with you.
Hi, it's Monet and Jen, and we are the co-founders of Birth Becomes You. We are birth photographers and doulas with over 10 years of experience. We've attended over 1,000 births collectively. We started Birth Becomes You to create a safe space for new and experienced birth photographers to share and grow. We aim to equip and empower birth workers to feel confident in the birth space and take beautiful, world-changing images. We believe in a world where birth is visible, where shame is absent, where fear is translated to power, and where each individual's experience is honored as valid and valued. We are so glad you're here, and we can't wait to learn and connect with you.
So, should we just jump in and get started?
Let's jump in.
All right. I'll let you go first.
Okay. So I think, when we work with new or beginning birth photographers, a lot of the questions that we get, I think you'd agree, Jen, have to do with understanding the birth process. Like, when do I go to a birth? What does it mean? What does this contraction pattern mean? And as someone who has been doing births now for 10 years, I think the number one thing that I know about birth is that birth is wild and unpredictable and incredibly humbling. I sometimes will make predictions based on my experience and what I've seen, and then my predictions are totally wrong, and I either underestimate or overestimate. And so I feel like every time I go to a birth, I'm just completely like, wow, like there are patterns for sure, but I think
Hmm.
surprised just as often as I'm like, wow, I totally predicted that was gonna go this way. Don't you agree? I mean,
Yeah. And we talk about this all the
yeah,
time. Like, even though we've been doing this for 10 years, it's really hard to know when to go to the birth because you don't want to go too early and kind of interfere with early labor.
right.
And you obviously don't want to go too late and miss it or being rushed, like rushing into the room. So it is an art, it's a skill, and it's a little bit of luck, I think, sometimes too.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the other night I was at a birth where I showed up thinking this baby is going to be born tomorrow evening. I'm going to maybe help with some positioning. This baby seemed a little posterior to me. And I got there and she was spontaneously pushing, and we had a baby just a couple hours later. So you never know. You can never really predict what is going to happen in a birth. And I think that's part of the wonder of it. I think that's why it's such an exciting job, is that
Yeah.
every time I go to a birth, I am surprised. Sometimes it requires a lot of like patience and a lot of
Yep.
reminding myself that, okay, this is going to take however long it's going to take, and I can't control that.
Hmm.
Other times I'm showing up and I'm like, okay, I've got to get really focused because the baby is coming and I need to be like on my game right now. But regardless, it's this huge spectrum. I think every birth that we go to, it truly is like a sacred experience. And
Hmm.
you're with a family and you're with individuals during one of the most like transformational experiences of their lives. And
Hmm.
I try to remind myself of that every time I go to a birth, even though part of my brain wants to get really analytical and think about contraction patterns and, when is this baby going to come and how long am I going to be at this birth? Try to remind myself that this first and foremost is a really sacred, transformative rite and ritual that we go through as human beings, becoming parents. And I try to bring that spirit into every birth that I attend.
It's so important. And it's important to know like how to act in that space too.
Yes.
And we talk a lot about that in our birth photography course, our Essence of Birth course. But I really think that is one of the most important things to think about in the birth space is how you are acting, how you're responding to the person in labor, and how you're responding to people around you. I actually just had a midwife just a couple weeks ago say to me, we had a birth photographer come in and she was there for the birth and kept asking when the baby was going to come and asking, did you check? Is she 10 centimeters? And she was saying all these things right in front of the client and really loud. And it really bothered the midwife. I mean, the midwife at one point actually asked her to step out of the room and had like a heart to heart with her. And she was like, if you're going to step into this space, you really need to understand birth. And I think that's so important. We hear that a lot.
Yes. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that we created the Essence of Birth is because we wanted to not only create like awesome birth photographers, obviously we want people to take amazing photos, but we wanted to create and help people find a way to become really thoughtful and engaged birth workers, people that weren't just there for the pretty picture, but were really
Right.
there for the whole birth experience and respectful language and patience and really seeing these individuals for who they are and honoring whatever choices they may make. That is like so central to our mission with
Mhm.
Birth Becomes You is to really train up and equip birth workers that are going to approach birth with just respect and
Respect.
yeah, respect. I think respect is
Mhm.
the best word to use.
And patience, I would say respect and
Yes,
patience
yes,
because
yes. And humility.
a lot of
And
patience and
right.
humility
And
for sure.
humility.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And sometimes I find myself I have to check myself and be like, whoa, like you went into this birth with a lot of assumptions and it ended up being
Hmm.
totally different than you
Yep.
expected. And
Hmm.
reminding myself that I can't control this. I know a lot, but I don't, this is something that is bigger. It's a bigger force than all of us, than any
Hmm.
OB, than any midwife, than any doula. Birth somehow finds a way to always surprise and humble us.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. It's so true.
The second thing I think every birth photographer needs to know is that being on call is a skill, and it's probably one of the biggest parts of this job. We
Hmm.
also hear from a lot of birth photographers and photographers who have clients or situations where they just didn't fully understand what it meant to be on call. And because of that reason, they end up missing the birth or they end up needing someone to cover the birth because they're going out of town. We're not just like scheduling on our calendar somebody's due date and
Right.
being like, well, we'll show up. We really have to
That'd
be
be
available.
amazing.
That would be
I'd love
amazing.
to
I
do that.
wish.
We'd
Yeah,
love to
I
do
wish
that.
that was the reality.
Hmm.
The reality is that, you're really committing to a family for usually over a month of time, being available or having a trusted backup available 24/7 every single day of the week.
Hmm.
That takes a lot of mental effort that I don't think people really understand until they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning I woke up and my client, her water had broke. She was a multip. And I had a whole day ahead of me with activities, things going on with my kids, dinner plans. And I laid in my bed and I sat there and probably for 20 minutes thought about like four different scenarios of what could happen that day and what I would need to arrange and rearrange and cancel and shuffle. It's a lot of mental work.
It
And
is. I was just going to say the literal same thing.
yeah,
Like the amount of mental gymnastics that we are doing all the time. Like I joke about it in my head. Like I take my kid to actual gymnastics, but then I have to have my bag just in case,
right,
especially if I have a client that's kind of on the fence. And then what's going to happen if I have to go to the birth while she's at gymnastics? Can I
right,
get my husband to get her? Can I get my parents to get her? They're 50 minutes away. Like how is that even going to work? Because once you're called to the birth, you don't
right,
have a whole lot of time to just wait around. Like sometimes you just have to go and you think that your clients are going to tell you, with some heads up, but sometimes they don't. And
right.
they don't have heads up
Right,
sometimes.
exactly. I was going to say sometimes they don't even have heads up.
Hmm.
I have clients that do a really good job of communicating, but
Hmm.
there's plenty of clients that have like 2-hour labors
Yeah.
and suddenly everybody is scrambling. They're
Mhm.
scrambling, we're scrambling. It's a reality that I live with every single day. And I know that you live with it too, Jen. It's one of the reasons why when we're stressed out and we're trying to figure something out, I call you, you call me, because very few people understand how demanding it is.
Mhm.
Both, photographers and clients, I don't think really even fully understand
Yeah.
what we live with every day. My kids go back to school next Monday, and Dottie, my third, is starting kindergarten. And I'm already kind of feeling that like anticipatory stress of what am I going to do if someone goes into labor and it's her first day of kindergarten? And how am I going to handle that? You
Mhm.
have to go through and think through these conversations in our
Everything.
brains every
Mhm.
single day. It's hard. It's hard. We talk about this a lot in the essence of birth because
Mhm.
we want to train up birth photographers that fully understand the commitment that this job takes. And then, of course, charge accordingly. Because a lot of
Mhm.
people that get started, right? I mean, how many people do you know, Jen, that are charging like a few $100s, right, for a birth
Yep.
session?
Yep.
Because they think,
Many.
yeah, they think I'm going to show up. I'll be there for a couple hours. Baby will
Mhm.
come. It's going to be really cool. I'll take some beautiful images. I'll go home. 5, 6 hours of time, maybe they charge $500.
Right.
But those are the same people that don't understand that you're going to be on call for five
Mhm.
weeks, that the birth might take 20, 30, 40 hours,
Right.
that the birth you might think the birth's happening one night and then actually happens like a week later.
Right.
There's so many different possibilities.
So many possibilities.
Right.
Labor is just such a wild beast. I was
Yeah.
at somebody's house for like 10 hours and her labor just stopped. Like
Yeah.
we all went home. We thought maybe we'd come back the next night. We came back 3.5 weeks later for her
Right.
birth. And
Right.
so you just never know. And you have to be ready for all of it. And you have to be like knowledgeable that you're going to have to be ready for all of it. Like it does take like catch you off guard, but you have to understand that this job is being caught off guard all the time. That's really what you live in, and your family lives in it too. It's a
Yes,
lifestyle.
it
And
is.
so understanding all that goes into it and preparing yourself, your clients, your family, it's a lot. It's a lot more than I think any new birth photographer really understands until they do a few births.
Right. And that's
I don't
why I
think I understood until I did a
no,
few births.
no. And even now there are times where it's hard. It's
Yeah,
definitely
it
the
is.
the number one reason I think people quit doing this job is
Hmm.
because of the on-call lifestyle.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about that in Essence of Birth because we want people to
Hmm.
fully understand the commitment. And we also want to give them tools to help manage this crazy part of the job as best as
Right.
you can. If you don't have those tools, you will burn out. You just can't do it for long. And
Yep.
I hope that through my experience and all the lessons that I've learned, and I know that you've learned over the years, Jen, we've been able to distill some of that into tips and tricks and strategies to
Yeah.
help make this part of the work sustainable because that's
Hmm.
our number one goal. I really do think, if you've been in birth for long, you can meet a midwife or a labor and delivery nurse or an OB or a doula, and you can really sense when it's someone that's been in the birth scene for a while.
Yeah.
They bring a
There's a
different
difference.
energy. It's really
Hmm.
important to have those elder birth workers. And so our goal is to create and help sustain an industry that is sustainable for more than just a couple of years.
Hmm.
We want birth workers to be able to do this for 1 decade, 2 decade, for as long as they want. And managing this on-call piece is a big part of that in my mind.
Hmm. And to be able to do that, you have to be able to charge accordingly.
Yes.
And I think that's a big piece of it. We talk a lot about pricing in the course. And I think that's a big hang up for new birth photographers and then even experienced birth photographers in that transitional time. And we
Right.
really work to like help you find a way that you can establish your pricing and then your experience in your local market. And I think that's a really important piece.
Absolutely. Because being on call and doing this crazy job and having to leave at a moment's notice, it's hard, but
Mhm.
it's a lot less hard when you're making six figures and you are taking care of family and you're able to pay for a massage and a vacation to your favorite city and a cleaner for your house. All of that feels much more the on-call piece feels much
Mhm.
more doable when you're being compensated for the amount of work that it takes. So
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
our big goal for everybody in our community and especially for our Essence of Birth students.
Hmm.
The other thing about birth photography is that you have to really know how to use your camera. You have to
A
know your
lot.
camera really well. I didn't understand how difficult it was to photograph a birth until I was racing to my first client's house. She, fifth baby, happening very quickly. I walked in the door. She was pushing. I was trying to get my camera out. The room was dim. Everybody was moving. It was just wild. And
Hmm.
to be perfectly honest, I didn't know my camera very well. I got some good shots by pure luck, but the vast majority of the images were pretty bad. And now looking back with all the knowledge I have, they were really bad. So I can't stress enough. You really need to understand how your camera works. You need to
Hmm.
understand the exposure triangle. You need to know how to work in low light. There's a lot of different ways
There's
you
a
can
lot.
approach it,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
you got to understand what the options are.
Hmm.
Got to be able to use them. Last night I went to a birth, Jen, and they had this is a big thing right now. I don't know, but I've seen at a lot of births, people have different color lights, right? So there was like
Yep.
blue and green lights. That was the
Hmm.
only lights in the room, blue and
Hmm.
green. Obviously, that's going to be a challenge. And
Hmm.
thankfully, I had a skill set and background to know how to navigate it. But I just thought to myself, goodness, if I was brand new and I had never done this before, I'd only done like maternity sessions outside or newborn sessions
Right.
in the studio, I would have been completely lost. I
Yeah.
would I would have panicked. I would have had a
Yeah.
panic attack.
Well, I had a birth that was similar where the mom was like, "Can you turn on that lamp?" And the dad picks up this like really cool looking lamp and it's this beautiful white light. And she's like, "No, no, 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 purple." And so
Right.
now we have it on purple, but it's beautiful. And I love the way that photos turned out. But you do have to know how to use that lighting to
Right.
benefit you and your client because you don't want them looking purple, right? Like you have
Exactly.
to do a good job with in this case with your camera more than with your editing
Right.
skill set. So knowing
And
your camera is really important.
you and I, Jen, we learned a lot of this through trial and error. We went to a lot of births. We made a lot of mistakes. It took us, a couple of years, I think, to really feel confident in what we were doing,
Hmm.
which is also why we created Birth Becomes You and the Essence of Birth course. It's because we wanted to give people a leg up. We wanted people to be able to walk into their very first birth, not feeling that panicky feeling of, oh my God, I don't know what to do,
Right.
having a toolbox, having the settings memorized, having different options for lighting figured out in their brain, all of that stuff. If you can practice and know about it ahead of time, it makes going into your first birth so much less intimidating.
It
And even
really
if
does.
you've done 10 births, like if you're still
Mhm.
struggling with your settings, if you still feel like you don't have consistency, you need to invest some time and energy into learning your camera and really nailing those settings. Now I can go to a birth and sometimes I get caught off guard by how quickly it's happening or maybe a situation that's happening at the birth, but I don't get caught off guard by my camera and my settings. I
Right.
feel really confident and it's a good feeling to have.
Mhm.
It allows me to not feel as anxious when I'm on call, to not feel as anxious when I'm driving to a birth
Yep.
because I know that I can walk into almost any situation and document it in a way that is authentic and beautiful.
Yep. And I mean, I absolutely agree with that and feel the same way. Like I walked into a birth that was happening really quickly and I just thought to myself, okay, like what do I do in this situation? I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to put my flash on. I needed to, give everybody space because everybody was having a moment. It was fast for the clients, it was fast for the hospital. And I was able to just do my job, take beautiful pictures the whole time. And as things settled in, get a little bit closer into the space and able to still continue documenting. And the baby was born 40 minutes later. I mean, it was just very quick, but knowing exactly what you needed to do in those moments and then doing them with a skill set and a presence that that everybody around you could appreciate. And I think that's really important.
It is important. I feel like sometimes when you aren't confident in your skills, your camera skills, it creates this kind of frantic energy
Frantic, yeah,
face where
anxious
you're,
energy.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And the birthing person doesn't need that, and then and the
right,
staff don't need that either.
right.
And so if you're that calm presence doing your job and doing it well, I think that really shows. And
Absolutely.
we really try to instill like what to do in those situations in our course
Right,
because those are situations that you walk into all the time.
right,
Like
right.
it's not very often that you get like a call that, hey, early labor started, and then 5 hours later you're going. Like it doesn't really work that way. Sometimes it does, but even then, 5 hours later might be 2 a.m.
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
it's all a juggle.
And I think another thing that is really important to talk about when you think about cameras and settings and birth is that as birth photographers, one of the coolest parts of our job is that we get to be in so many different spaces, right? Like we're in the OR one day and then the next day we're in somebody's bathroom or somebody's closet.
Right.
And it is such a spectrum. Sometimes, rarely, but sometimes I do have beautiful afternoon light pouring in to a living room and I feel like I'm on cloud nine. But often I am in a dark space with bad lighting, colored lighting, no lighting,
The salt lamp.
the salt lamp.
Hmm.
And I have to know what to do and I have to know how to make the right kind of adjustments that are going to disturb the birthing person as least as possible. That's always the goal, but
Hmm.
also document their birth. And it's that balance, right? You have to figure out that balance of
Hmm.
how do I was at a birth the other day where I literally walked into the room and it was pitch black. There was nothing. It didn't matter if I had cranked my ISO up to 300,000. It didn't matter. There was
Hmm.
no
No
capturing
light.
anything.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so I had to have the confidence to know, okay, this is an impossible situation. I have to add some light in here if I'm going to document the birth. And I had to know the right time to approach the birthing person. I had to know about the right lighting source to introduce. I'm not going to go in there and turn on every light. And, that's not we're never going to do that. But I had to know how to approach it, when to step in, when to change the lighting. And I did it with confidence. And the
Hmm.
birthing, my client was completely on board, was not disturbed by it, was really happy that I was there, got beautiful images. But all of that takes education and time and skill.
It absolutely does. Like
Yeah.
you saying that takes me back to like a birth that I did years ago. This was a Denver birth, and it was with Jen Anderson.
Yes.
And it was a home birth, and I loved her, and I knew what the client wanted. She wanted a very dark birth birth space. I knew that. I expected it. But but I did say, my camera needs some light to focus. Like
Right.
otherwise I can't take the pictures that you want. You want non-grainy
Right.
photos, but you also don't want light. And I walked into that room, and I kid you not, it took me 5 minutes before I could even see myself.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't see anything. And it was at night. Like it
Right.
wasn't like I was walking in from like a sunny day into a dark room. It was absolutely pitch black, just like what you said. And then they were like, well, you can turn on the bathroom light. And of course, like she's laboring as far from that bathroom as possible. That light is not reaching
Right.
her. She's in a corner.
Right.
And I was totally like panicking, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to document this? And it was really hard and I managed, but like looking back, I know exactly what I would have done. But then, it was a lot of like a little bit of worry on my part. And if things had gone really fast and she had the baby right then, I don't know that I would have gotten the kind of photos that she wanted.
Absolutely. And
And that's the worst feeling.
that is the worst feeling. And that's what we want for birth photographers is to have a really thorough toolkit so that they can go into any situation like the one you were talking about and have several different options that they feel
Hmm.
confident trying or doing
Yeah.
so that they can document the birth in a way that is, again, authentic, but also well documented.
Hmm.
I had a birth the other day where the mom had literally a rainbow of lights. Again, this is a new trend, a rainbow of lights in her living room, and I was filming it. And there's limits with film in terms of what you can do when you edit the film.
Right.
And I pulled the sister aside and said, "Hey, these lights, they're cool. I'm totally on board, but I just want to show you what the footage is going to look like." as is. And so I played her some footage and you could see the look on her face. Oh my gosh, she does not want that. And so then we just turned the lights to like a neutral yellow, warm tone,
Hmm.
moved
Yay
forward.
for the sister.
Right,
Well
right. But
done.
I think
Yes.
the thing that people forget is that as birth photographers, we are hired to be the experts about documenting the birth story.
Yeah.
Just as the midwife is the expert on normal birth, just as the OB is an expert on complicated births, we are the experts on documenting the birth well. And so if you go into the birth and you realize that like there's a situation or a condition that's going to prohibit me from doing my job, it's your duty and your job to speak up, to have
Yeah.
that confidence, right? We want
Yes.
every birth photographer to feel confident in making changes when they're necessary. Again,
Yeah.
work with what you can always, first and foremost, but also know when you're in an unworkable situation and then figure out what to do to change it.
Yeah, I
So,
think that's so important.
yeah,
And like, I also think there's a lot of little things that you're making decisions about along the way. Like, if your client with the rainbow lights was having her baby right then,
right,
it was probably very important to change that so that she could have her film without, rainbows all over or
right,
whatever,
right.
everybody's skin being a funny color. But if you knew that she had 10 more hours of labor, you might not have said that in that very moment. And
Absolutely.
and knowing the birth process, knowing your camera, knowing all of these things is what like puts it all together and helps
Absolutely.
to create beautiful photos. And there's a lot of expertise and knowledge that goes into that. And we are like happy and love to like talk about that and share that with you.
Yeah,
So
I love
I
that,
hope
Jen.
that comes across because I mean, we love what we do and we love teaching what we
Yes.
do.
It was really cool last night, Jen, at the birth that I was at. The doula was actually one of our former Essence of Birth students.
Oh,
So
yay.
she took our course, I don't remember when, maybe last year. And she was so sweet because we got to meet in person and that connection was really cool. When I got there, though, every room, just like you were talking about, every light in her room was dark. It was pitch black. I could have gone in there and turned on the lights, but I thought to myself, I think we have some time. So I'm going to just let it settle. I'm going to say I'm here, unpack my bags, get a drink. And then the amazing, sweet doula student, we kind of made some light adjustments together. But you're right. It's about putting all those pieces together, knowing your camera, but then also understanding when is the right time. Where are we in the birth? Do we have hours or do we have minutes? And
Mhm.
making adjustments when it's appropriate. It's okay. If someone wants to labor in the dark and they're in like early active labor, let them labor in the dark. You don't
Yeah,
have to document every single second. It's okay to
exactly.
step back and give them space. So I think
Mhm.
that's so important.
Yeah,
Well, we could talk forever about this, but
we
I think
could.
we should go to the fourth thing that every birth photographer needs to know, and that's marketing. And I hate to say that because I think that for many of us birth workers, we love birth, we love the arts of birth photography, and the marketing piece and the business piece can feel like a total drag, can
Mhm.
feel really intimidating and discouraging, even. It's
Mhm.
really hard. It's a hard part of this job, but it's an essential part of this job.
Yeah.
And even
You
as
have to
someone,
get clients.
you do. And even as someone who's been doing this for a long time and I have a big following and I've done almost 1,000 births, I still have to think about marketing every single month. I can't just be like, okay, cool, I've made it. So now I'm just going to shrug my shoulders and the inquiries are just going to keep on coming forever. It's not
It's
like that.
constant. Yeah, it's a
Constant.
constant.
Yeah.
And
And
it's a
that's
constant in all the different areas.
right.
I mean, it's
Right.
a constant, you know, local connections. It's a constant social media strategy. It's a constant like updating your website, blogging, sending
Right.
emails to your list. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And
Hmm.
it's one of the reasons that I think you and I have made a commitment to continue to be practicing birth photographers while we are also teaching. Because a lot of people that
Hmm.
decide to teach in the photography space, they don't do
They don't do birthing
necessarily very
anymore.
many sessions. Maybe they'll do, if they're a wedding a wedding mentor, maybe they'll do one wedding a year, but they're not really doing it in the way that they were doing it before they started teaching. You and I have always felt like it's been really important to stay in our community and to be working right alongside all of our students.
Hmm.
So
Birth
we're,
changes. It
yeah,
changes constantly. I
it
mean, there's
does.
so much that stays the same, but there is so much that changes.
Yeah. And so
Um,
we're in the trenches. We're in the trenches with everybody. We know how TikTok and Reels have changed things dramatically. We know how the algorithm sometimes works in our advantage and other times really doesn't work in our advantage.
Yeah.
We are brainstorming and learning right along with you because just as it's important for you to bring in new clients, it's important for me to bring in new
Mhm.
clients, Jen, for you to bring in new clients. And so that's a big part of what we do with the Essence of Birth is we're not only teaching you how to be an amazing photographer and to be a really conscious and aware birth worker, but we also want to help you be an awesome marketer, someone that
Yeah.
can grow and change and adapt. And we've helped a lot of birth photographers over the years build really amazing, thriving businesses. I mean, I'm thinking just off the top of my head, Lindsay Eden here in Denver. I mean, she's competing with me. Like we're each other's competition. And to
Mhm.
watch her business flourish and for her to find her own unique client and her own unique market has been beautiful.
Mhm.
Carmen Bridgewater down in Texas, Nicole Hammock, who had to move, from Phoenix to Utah, all of these amazing birth photographers and birth workers that have found a way and paved a way after taking Essence of Birth has been really inspiring to see.
Mhm.
And it is truly one of the hardest parts. Not as hard as being on call. I still think that's number one, but maybe number two is marketing in an
Yeah.
ever-changing world. So this year with our Essence of Birth students, we're actually going to be spending extra time marketing because we know that it's been hard for a lot of people in our community.
Yep.
Money's tight all across the country and the world. People are really being particular about what they're spending their extra money on. And
Mhm.
so we have to work a little bit harder to get clients right now. And so that's a big focus for us in Essence, and especially in this upcoming cohort. We're actually going to do a marketing lab for anybody who signs up on the first 2 days of registration, which we're really excited about. It's going to be 2 Zoom calls where we get to brainstorm together. We're going to come up with marketing strategies that are unique to each of us because right, Jen, like how I market here in Denver is very different than how you have to market in
Yep.
Michigan.
Yep. It's
There's
very
some
different.
overlap, but it's a different experience for each of
Yeah.
us. So we're going to talk about that and try to really help everybody that's in that lab figure out where they fit and come up with a unique strategy for them. I'm working on a strategy for myself right now, even
Yeah.
though I am fully booked for the rest of 2024 and booking well into 2025. I'm still trying to figure out how do I take it to the next level? How do I sustain this level of success for the long term?
No, it's so important. And there's so many little things, Google Ads, and like, how does that factor in? And all of
Yes,
the ever changing like SEO rules that we're seeing
right.
now. And so our course has a lot of that information in it. And then we like work to learn this stuff so we are current and knowledgeable so that we can put it into practice for our own businesses and then help you. And that's
Absolutely.
really important to us. And I also think understanding like business long term is really important. Like understanding how to set up your business, how to maintain your business, how to pay your taxes. Like all of these things are part of having a successful business. And you need to put all of those pieces together to kind of keep it going. And I think that's one of the hardest parts, at least for new photographers getting started. Can I say that again? Like,
Yes.
Julie, edit that out.
Yeah,
Like, for new photographers getting started in this industry, there's a lot of things that you need to do from setting up your business to like, creating your business and just all the things in between. And we really work hard on helping you to do that and figuring out where you're at so that we can help you where you're at. Like maybe you have set up a business, but you haven't done, these other things. So I think
absolutely.
there's a lot of like little things that we really focus on in our
Yeah.
course.
The thing about birth in general is that there's so much, again, I think it comes back to the patriarchy, of course, but there's so many reasons why birth workers all across the spectrum, from midwives to labor and delivery nurses to doulas to birth photographers, exist in a world in which sometimes I feel like our work is undervalued and we undervalue ourselves, right? We're not charging enough. We're building businesses that are more like hobbies on the side versus long-term careers. That's really important to me as someone who has truly built a career out of this. to help other birth workers do the same. It's
Hmm.
amazing work. It fills up my soul, but it's also really important that it is building my family's future, that it is providing for me in the present, and also that I'm able to set aside money every month for retirement, for my kids' education. All of that is important. And I really want to help birth workers, not only birth photographers, but I'm talking about home birth midwives. I'm talking about doulas,
Hmm.
talking about lactation consultants, all of these people that are doing such important work that have not found a way to make this business really sustainable for themselves and their family for the long term. And so it is a goal of both of ours. It's a goal of Birth Becomes You. It's something that's part of every aspect of our course. We want you to take beautiful photos, absolutely, but we also want you to have a business that's able to succeed in the long term. It's
Hmm.
important.
It really is. And piecing all of these things together and being able to balance them all is really the key to being successful for the long term.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
Well, we hope you enjoyed us talking about these four things that we think every new and experienced birth photographer needs to know. But we also want to take a moment just to talk about Essence of Birth. We've mentioned it throughout this episode. This is our premier course. We've been teaching it for years now. We've taught hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 birth photographers across the country and the world. And registration opens up on August 19th. Like we mentioned, the people that sign up on those first 2 days are going to get not only the course, which is 7 weeks of content, of live Zoom calls, of mentoring feedback, but you're also going to get to be part of the marketing lab, which we're really excited about. We're doing that for the first time for this cohort. We really hope that if you are in that kind of beginning phase, maybe you've photographed 10 births, I think anything less than 20 births, Essence of Birth is a great place for you to start. If you're a doula and you want to expand your business, if you're a photographer and you want to get into birth, or if you're totally brand new and you just love the birth experience, then we would really love for you to consider taking Essence of Birth.
And the
So,
course content is available for life.
yes,
And this is a question that we get a lot. You can come back and rewatch and reread all of this content at any time. And I think that's really important because sometimes you're busy digesting one piece and then it's harder to digest another. And so it's nice to be able to come back to check your settings. Like what were those settings that Jen and Monet said I should start with? And you can just go right back and look at the settings chapter and see exactly what you need. And all of those pieces are there. You can look them up on your phone when you're at a birth. And I think those little things when you're at a birth and you're like kind of struggling or juggling to figure out what you're supposed to do, it's nice to at least be able to have that as something that you can access just at your fingertips.
absolutely.
And I had somebody tell me that just a few weeks ago. They were like, well, I didn't know what to do. It was really dark at this birth. I couldn't remember what my flash settings were supposed to be. I looked in the course. And I think that's cool. I think that they knew that that was a resource that they could use and utilize immediately, and it worked for them. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And I think the cool thing about Essence of Birth is that these students that take our course and start photographing births, they're more than students. They become some of our closest friends. A lot of them now are teaching with us and working
Mm-hmm.
with us professionally. One of my students, Brittany, is now full-time associate with me. She backs me up for all my births. The connections that we make in this course are a big deal, and we want people to walk away and feel like they're more than just like, I just took a birth photography course. We want them to feel like they found a community and they found a safe space to grow, to be vulnerable, to celebrate with. It's more than just a 7-week course. It really is this long-term community. Every single month after you take the Essence of Birth, we have a live Zoom call for certified birth photographers from all over the world. So you can join in and get education every single month indefinitely after you complete our course. We have a call tomorrow that, they're talking about backup photographers. How do you find a good backup photographer? And I think
So
that,
important.
yeah, which is so
So
important.
important.
But I think that's a really, really cool part of what we do is it's
Hmm.
more than just like checking off a course and getting some tips and some tricks. It's about finding a landing place for you as a business owner, as a birth worker, as a photographer, as an artist. So we'd love for you to consider joining us. You're more than welcome to message us or email us at birthbecomesher@gmail.com if you want to know if this course is a good fit for you. We love talking to people about where they're at and what we think the course might or may not offer them. We'll be honest with you. If we don't think it's a good fit, we'll tell you. We've done that
Hmm.
many times for people. So
Hmm.
if you have questions, we would love to chat with you.
Yeah, we absolutely have done that too. We want this course to be like such a benefit to you as well. So if
Yes.
it's not going to be like, it's not our primary objective. So
Yes.
yeah, we're really excited to work with you and we're excited to like see you grow and succeed. That's super important.
Yeah. The number one goal for sure.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for being here with us today. Is there anything else you want to add, Monet? Any other last minute thoughts?
I think that ultimately, with the essence of birth, our goal has always been for people to feel like they are able to walk away from the course with confidence, that they feel like they understand their camera, they understand the birth process, they understand how to build a business that can be sustainable for the long term. We want every single one of our birth photographers to be a wild success, like so many of our former students have been. I love that so many of the photographers here in Denver have taken our course and are now booking clients and taking beautiful images. We are about sharing, we are about community, we are about connection. And so, if that's what you're looking for, we hope you consider joining us for the fall cohort because that's what we're all about.
I love that.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. And we can't wait to see, I guess not see, we can't wait to talk more next week. But as a reminder, registration opens on August 19th, and you can find out more details on our website. And we will make sure to put that in the show notes. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Find out more about us, our courses, and other tools for birth photography at birthbecomesyou.com. And make sure to follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Birth Becomes You. And if you love listening, make sure to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and subscribe wherever you listen. Thanks. Catch you on the flip side.